Picture this. It's the early 2000s and you're browsing the magazine stand at the grocery store while your mom is in the checkout line. You're leafing through the latest issue of Nintendo Power or Game Informer or PlayStation Magazine. In between articles about the latest Pokemon or GTA games are full-page ads. Normally your eyes would just glaze over as you flipped past these pages, but these advertisements actually catch your attention. Okay, that last one wasn't real, but it could have been because video game ads used to be kind of insane back in the day. But real quick before we get into it, I just wanted to say that in case you missed my announcement video, I just launched channel memberships, where you can pay a small monthly fee and gain access to a bunch of cool exclusive bonus content, all while enabling me to continue my passion of making these totally cool and awesome videos for you. Just click the join button down below for all the details. Okay, back to the video. It's especially weird in hindsight because you don't really see game ads like this anymore. Where did they go, and why were they so unhinged in the first place? In order to answer this question, we need to take a look at the conditions of the game industry in the mid to late 90s. The industry had experienced a bit of a slowdown, with consoles like the Sega Saturn and Nintendo 64 not selling as well as their respective companies had hoped. At the same time, it was an era of rapid change, with new players like Sony coming onto the scene with their massively successful PlayStation, and rumors of Microsoft joining the fray as well, along with the introduction of 3D graphics and CD-ROM-based consoles. It was rare that the leader of one generation would hold that position in the next, so these companies were in fierce competition for control of the console market. There was also a push for video games to become more mainstream and be taken more seriously as an entertainment industry on par with music, TV, and film. Gaming had mainly been viewed as a hobby for children and nerds, and gaming companies were trying to capture a new audience. So they just started throwing stuff at the wall with their advertising campaigns and seeing what stuck. The main forms of advertising for video game products in the late 90s and early 2000s were print ads and magazines and TV commercials, and most gaming companies took a rather unorthodox approach to both. Ads of the time were often surreal or bizarre, and at times had little to do with the product they were advertising. They had that techno-utopianism aesthetic that was popular at the time, frequently had sexual undertones or overtones, and always seemed to have a woman whispering at the end for some reason.
PSP is here. Touch me.
This was actually really smart from a marketing perspective because it definitely made the ads memorable. They aroused viewers' curiosity, captured their imagination, and effectively conveyed that the products were both otherworldly and essential to own. Let's zoom in a little and take a look at some of the most iconic video game advertising campaigns of the Y2K era. Sony sort of pioneered the weird ad formula with their promotion of the PlayStation, and even more so, the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation was born after a deal between Nintendo and Sony to develop a version of the Super Famicom that used CD-ROM discs instead of cartridges went south, leading Sony to decide to develop the idea themselves. They wanted to differentiate themselves from Nintendo, who were primarily making family-friendly games by targeting a wider audience. This was reflected in their advertising. Certain ads, like the goofy and colorful Society Against PlayStation commercials, were aimed more at kids, while others were a bit weirder or edgier. One of their most memorable ads from the late 90s was this one that featured a girl who has been digitally altered to have an alien bobblehead, talking in a thick Scottish accent about mental wealth. I don't know what the fuck this has to do with PlayStation, and I'm almost certain it contributed to somebody's childhood trauma. Sony really cranked the weirdness up to 11 when it came time to market the PS2. The original PlayStation had been a success, but Sony wanted to go after a more mature audience for its successor. They stated that their target market was 17-year-olds, using the logic that younger kids aspire to be teenagers, and adults aspire to enjoy video games at the same level they did when they were 17. Their ads during this time focused on promoting escapism, with slogans like "Live in your world, play in ours," and "Welcome to the third place." This TV commercial, filmed in Rio de Janeiro, shows hordes of people running towards something and creating a human mountain, jostling to reach the top. The ad ends with a promotion for the PS2's online capabilities, making it seem so exciting that people are literally climbing over each other to get to it. Although many of the ads were strange and surreal, they had a certain artistic quality to them. Sony even brought in acclaimed director David Lynch, the guy whose entire brand is making weird art, to direct a commercial for their Third Place campaign, and it definitely looks like it would fit right in on an episode of Twin Peaks. The Third Place is described as somewhere between your waking life and your dreaming life, that other world you get transported to when you start up a game. According to the European marketing director for PlayStation, David Patton, Lynch said himself that he's been living in this third place for some time, so there was no one better than him who would understand what they were trying to communicate. There are several other third place ads that are attributed to David Lynch on YouTube, but I couldn't find anything confirming that he directed these as well, and they're certainly a lot less weird than the one he directed for sure, so I think the uploaders may be mistaken. They were uploaded like 15 plus years ago, and no one really gave a fuck about accuracy then. Sony clearly did something right with this unconventional approach to advertising, because the PS2 went on to be the best-selling video game console of all time, a title it still holds to this day. By the time the PlayStation 3 came around in 2006, Sony had well established the PlayStation brand as a leader in the market, so there was less need for such ostentatious marketing, but that doesn't mean they gave it up altogether. In fact, one of the most infamous PlayStation ads came from this era. Raise your hand if you feel victimized by this image. If you haven't seen this commercial before, consider yourself lucky. It features a rather creepy-looking baby doll sitting in a blank white room across from a PS3 console. The baby babbles, laughs in an adult voice, and tears leak from its eyes before retracting back into them. The PS3 then begins to levitate, and the slogan "Play Beyond" is shown. Millions of people watched this ad as it aired on TV during a World Series game, and were likely a little confused as to what it had to do with a video game console. Sony's marketing vice president, Peter Dill, claimed that the commercial was up to viewer interpretation, like an abstract art piece. Well, I interpret that statement to mean that even they didn't know what the fuck they were trying to communicate. It sure was memorable though, so I guess it succeeded in that respect. After the smash success of the PS1 and PS2, other companies started taking notes. Microsoft in particular was getting a little nervous after the release of the PS2, fearing that it would overtake home computers as the primary family entertainment system since it could play CDs and DVDs in addition to games. They decided to shift away from developing games for PC and release their own console, the Xbox, in 2001. Their approach to advertising their console wasn't quite as unique as Sony's, but they did create a few ads that were a little out there. The most notorious one was a commercial officially known as Champagne, though it is more commonly referred to as the Life is Short ad. It features a woman giving birth to a baby that rocket propels out of her snatch and through the window, flying through the air and rapidly aging, until, as an old man, he crashes into his own grave, with the slogan reading, "Life is short, play more." This commercial actually started out as an online viral video, except this was before the social media and YouTube era, so people were sharing it through email. It was so successful that Microsoft decided to air a higher quality version on TV. The people viewing it on TV seemed not to like it as much as the people viewing it on the internet, however, because the UK Independent Television Commission received 136 complaints from people who had seen the commercial and found it offensive or upsetting. Interestingly, the part that offended and upset them wasn't when a woman shot a baby out of her hoo-ha like a tampon when you sneeze too hard, but rather when the man crashed into his grave at the end, presumably dead. Apparently this hit too close to home for some viewers who had been recently bereaved. As a recently bereaved person myself, I thought the ad was pretty funny, but everyone grieves differently, I suppose. Anyways, these complaints led to the commercial being pulled from TV, although it continued to be available online. Banning it, however, created a bit of a Streisand effect and only made it more popular. I'd certainly place it up there with Mental Wealth and Creepy Baby in terms of most infamous video game commercials. As to what prompted Microsoft to create such a controversial commercial, said Xbox European advertising manager Harvey Eagle, "When you're new, you have to be clear about what you stand for as a brand, and I think that particular idea really encapsulated everything that we were trying to represent as a new brand in the video games industry. Dedicate your entire life to Xbox." He didn't say that last part. Out loud, anyway. I feel like Nintendo's late 90s, early 2000s advertising is less talked about than that of its two competitors. Perhaps it's because, to this day, the company still has a pretty innocent, family-friendly image, with its main, largely E-rated franchises, Mario, Pokemon, Zelda, remaining the same over the past 30 years, although there is a concerning amount of hentai games on the Switch eShop now. Probably the most well-known old Nintendo commercial is the one for the original Super Smash Bros. Game, where people in Pikachu, Mario, Yoshi, and Donkey Kong mascot suits start beating each other up in a field of flowers. This may have been a little crazy at the time, but it seems pretty tame looking back now that we're 5 Smash games deep, and the roster has expanded to include Fire Emblem characters you've never heard of. This doesn't mean that Nintendo didn't have any weird ads, though. Like everyone else, they decided they were going to try and court an older audience with the release of the GameCube in 2001. Its sales initially lagged behind those of the Xbox and PS2, and Nintendo noticed the success their competitors had been having with more mature game franchises like Tomb Raider and Halo, causing them to change their approach. According to the general manager of Nintendo of Canada, Ron Bertram, in 2002, the company planned to spend a significant portion of their advertising budget on marketing GameCube games towards adults. Several less kid-friendly games were released for the platform, including some Resident Evil titles, Metroid Prime, and the first T-rated mainline Zelda game, and the ads became similarly edgier, and not just for the games I mentioned. Take a look at this ad and tell me what game you think it's for. Did you guess Luigi's Mansion? Oh, no, you didn't? The hot goth chick turns into a GameCube at the end, and the dude suddenly loses interest, which is some weak shit, I must say. A Nintendo GameCube would absolutely be on my hear me out cake. I mean, just look at that controller. Another supposedly banned commercial was this French one for Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube that I'm not sure I can even fully show here. It features a naked woman breastfeeding a baby while a childlike voiceover says, "Remember the place where you felt the safest, the most comfortable, the most loved." That place doesn't exist anymore. Sorry if that translation's not 100% accurate, my French is rusty. The woman then looks up, revealing her horrifying zombie-like face. This absolutely would have haunted me forever had I seen it as a child. I feel like Resident Evil 4 itself isn't even that scary, but maybe I've just been looking at too many Catboy-made Leon edits. Although the GameCube did start to fare better over time, its sales still weren't quite reaching the numbers Nintendo had been hoping for, especially when compared to the wildly successful PS2, which started to make Nintendo a little nervous. They planned to release a new handheld console that would exist alongside the GameCube and Nintendo's other handheld, the Game Boy Advance. This, of course, was the Nintendo DS, which we now know became nearly as successful as the PS2, thanks in large part to its ability to capture the attention of new audiences that hadn't previously been interested in video games. But they didn't start off targeting girls, older folks, and casual gamers in their marketing of the DS. Nintendo were sort of banking on the DS doing well to ensure their future success as a company. To quote then president of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi, "If the DS succeeds, we will rise to heaven, but if it fails, we will sink to hell." Therefore, they decided to go with the by then well-proven method of advertising the handheld to a primarily male, college-aged audience. And this is evident in just how sexual a lot of the ads were. Exhibit A. I should fuck my DS. Print ads such as these appeared in men's magazines like Maxim and Blender. Weirdly sexual ads were not new to Nintendo by any means. Family-friendly company my ass. But they really went for it with the DS. Before they had Beyoncé pretending to play Rhythm Heaven, DS commercials looked like this.
Go on, touch it. It won't bite.
Touch me.
Wow, very suggestive and hot. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in the meeting where they came up with that one. Touching is good and touch me were the main advertising slogans at the time. Obviously meant to allude to the console's lower touchscreen, but managing to suggest a lot of other things as well. In the words of an NBC article written around the time of the DS's release, Nintendo wanted to make it clear that this was not your little brother's Game Boy. And again, this is super weird to me looking back because almost everyone I knew who had a DS was a child or was the parent of a child, and it became not cool to be seen playing a DS by the time I was like 12. Didn't stop me though, because I already wasn't cool. On the less horny side of things, Nintendo ran another promotional campaign for the DS that was a little odd. Gamers could go to touchingisgood.com and would surprisingly not be directed to a porn website, but rather a website where they could fill out a form and request to receive a severed mannequin hand in the mail from Nintendo. No, I'm not making this up. The idea was that those who received the hands would use them in a photo or video that demonstrated why touching is good, and upload it to the website. The most creative entry would win $1,000 and a free DS. Evidently, Nintendo didn't anticipate this contest becoming as popular as it did, because they pretty quickly ran out of physical mannequin hands, and instead prospective entrants would have to download a PDF with a picture of the hand on it and print it out, which really isn't the same. The website can still be viewed on the Wayback Machine, and several of the video entries have been uploaded to YouTube, and they are appropriately trippy. Fun fact, I was scared of mannequins as a kid, so I would have hated this had I come across it at the time. So now the question becomes, why aren't video game ads like this anymore? Sure, they were weird and sometimes a bit creepy, but they were a lot more fun to watch than an ad that's just gameplay with some guy talking over it. Well, I would attribute this to a few different factors. For one, the gaming industry has changed a lot since the late 90s and early 2000s. It's a lot bigger now, and everyone's sort of carved out their own niche. There aren't really many big new players coming onto the scene in terms of console development, so there's less competition, less need to stand out and capture new audiences. Also, with the rise of social media and platforms like YouTube and Twitch, there's just less need for companies to put so much effort into advertising since word of mouth and gaming content creators sort of take care of a lot of it for them. When I hear about a new game or console coming out, it's usually from social media, not a commercial. And that's another thing. Advertising itself has changed a lot. With the huge decline of print media in the last decade or so, I would imagine video game print ads are nearly extinct. Most of those magazines I mentioned at the beginning of the video went out of print years ago. Cable has declined massively with the rise of streaming as well, making TV commercials a much less lucrative form of advertising. Part of it could also just be the enshittification of everything I've spoken about in other videos, namely my whatever happened to profile customization video. It feels like most things are a lot more bland and boring now than they used to be. The 2000s had a lot of iconic ads, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any particularly memorable ones from the last 10 years. Maybe if ads still had some artistic merit to them, or could at least get a laugh out of you, I wouldn't be going out of my way to get rid of them. My Chrome runs so slow now because of all the extensions I have installed, but that's still preferable to seeing even a single crypto scam or AI-generated Coca-Cola ad. So what was your favorite unhinged video game ad? Were there any I forgot to mention? Let me know down in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, liking, subscribing, and sharing would be very much appreciated. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Thank you to my channel members, and an extra special thank you to my Pookies, Sebastian Brady, Mari, Monophobia, Sabali Sam, Mr. Logan 1223, Lars, Waimu, and Holy Diver. You guys rock.